This is Living Healthy with the Woman in You, the show with the information on health that you need to know from people you can trust.
Hi, welcome to Living Healthy. I'm your host, Sheryl Turgeon. Today our topic is holistic healing through nutrition, and we'll talk about nutritional alternatives to the Western mainstream diet and their effect on health and healing. Joining us is Kim Bella, PhD of theshakeupartist.com. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Sheryl.
So glad to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Dr. Kim Bella is a practicing psychotherapist specializing in transpersonal and expressive arts approaches to wholeness and healing. She helps others understand and overcome the obstacles and barriers that keep them from leading full, healthy lives using nutrition, exercise, and mind-body practices. So Kim, tonight we're talking about raw food, and I would love to know what prompted you to get involved with eating a raw diet.
Well, it was about 5 years ago. And prior to that, my husband and I always did a spring cleanse. Every year we would do a fast. And about 5 years ago, my sister had done this detox diet, and she recommended, she's got to try this. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, good. And so she gave me the name of the book, and I tried to find the book, and I thought I found the book, but it turned out it wasn't the same book. And this one happened to be a raw food detox diet book. And since I couldn't find the other one, it's like, well, I'll try this. And so it was quite by accident, stumbled upon this book, and it's like, okay, well, let's give it a try. And loved it so much that I continued doing it. And we usually do the fast for a week, a cleanse for the week, and then after that week, again, I just felt so great that
Did you?
I just kept going.
And what were some of the differences that you noticed?
Eating the raw live food diet, I noticed immediately that I had more energy. I didn't need as much sleep. I was sleeping really, really well. I noticed that I wasn't as affected by external circumstances. So work was really, really stressful. There was a lot of going on at work. Very, very busy time. And I noticed that I was calm, and I wasn't as affected by the outside influences that were going on. So kind of a steady disposition. So more energy, steady disposition. There was a lot of people sick in the workplace. I didn't get sick at all. I was the only one who didn't call in sick during, the whole flu season.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing. I felt very strong physically, emotionally, mentally, mental clarity, my memory improved. Just all these really wonderful benefits.
And over what period of time would you say it took for you to experience those benefits?
Well, some of them started right away, like feeling the energy. Feeling more energy happened within the first week. I noticed it right away. And I was doing 100% raw at that time. And my husband, it was very difficult for him to do 100%, so he had to include some like rice, brown rice. But for me, I was 100% raw, and then stayed 100% raw for a couple weeks, and then went down to 80% raw. So then I started introducing some cooked foods, organic, local, healthy foods into my diet. And still continued feeling, the incredible energy. I felt really light. I just felt really, really good being in my body and being able to think clearly. And that was really a treat.
Sounds like a wonderful transition.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been eating raw or live?
Well, it's been about 5 years. I initially started in California, where it was much easier to have access to raw, live foods year-round. Moved to New England area about 3 years ago and noticed a bit of a challenge finding the same kind of access to the healthier foods, especially during the winter time. So I had to make a few adjustments to continue. So there are times during the winter that I've gone down to probably like 60 or 70%. But mostly I would say I'm at 80%.
You mentioned both raw and live food. Could you tell me what the difference is between the two?
Well, raw and live, a lot of times they're kind of intermixed. It's like interchangeable. But to be specific and precise, raw food would be foods that are typically when you cut something from its energy source. So you pick an apple off the tree, or you cut a Brussels sprout, or you chop off broccoli from the plant, it starts losing its nutrients right away. So as it ages, it loses the vitamins, minerals, and everything. And then with live foods are what are called enzymatically viable. So you can think of them as actually a living food, that it actually has a life force inherent in it because it is still basically growing. So if you look at foods like sprouts are continually growing. So it's the germination and the growing. So as you're eating them, you are taking in, all the nutrients from the growth of that plant, the sprouts. With nuts, for example, the nuts have enzymatically rich, and so when nuts are soaked, it releases the inhibitors, the enzyme inhibitors, so it makes the nutrition in the nuts more viable. So then the body gets the benefits of having the nutrients more easily absorbed into the system.
So the raw food still does have enzymes, however, it's not as many enzymes?
Yeah, it's probably not as much, and then it decreases over time because as it ages, it loses. I mean, you've seen broccoli and carrots and celery that as they age, they get a little bit wilty, and so it's losing a lot of the nutrients just through, being separated from the energy source and, the aging process.
Right.
Yeah. So when we look at a lot of the live foods, what we're looking at are sprouts, nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruits, fermented foods.
Right. And can you give me some examples of the fermented foods that you'd want to include in your diet?
Sauerkraut's a good one. Kimchi is also another good one. There's a product on the market called Rejuvelac, which is actually a drink that's fermented that's supposed to be really, really good for you. That's been fermented.
Oh, great. So what's a typical raw food diet in your day?
In my day?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Well, I start out with a smoothie every morning. So it includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, like chia seeds, flax seeds. I use hemp protein powder, filtered water as my base, usually whatever fruits in season, fresh fruits in season, and then I do use a lot of berries like blueberries and raspberries and blackberries frozen. Let's see, what else do I? Kale. So I use a lot of the dark green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach.
And you mix those right in with the
put it all right in the blender.
Fruit.
Yeah, everything all together. And what's really great about it is in the blending process, what happens, it breaks down a lot of the fibers, like for kale, for example. It can be very hard to digest in its raw form. And so ways to break down the cell walls so that it makes it easily digestible in the body, and blending is one way to do that. Massaging it with salt or vinegar or lemon juice is another way to do that.
Terrific.
But putting it in the blender, blending it up, it breaks it all down, so then it makes it more easily absorbed into the system, and so more easily digestible.
I imagine with all those nutrients that you're also feeling satisfied longer after a breakfast like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I remember when I first started the raw food diet, the live food diet, I felt really hungry all the time. I almost felt like I was being cheated out of eating in some way. I was like, it's just going to be salads, and I found it's much, much more than that. But when I first began, it was just, I just felt hungry all the time. But then I noticed, and this happened within the first week, I noticed that I was eating less. I felt like I didn't need to have as much food, that I was being satisfied with like an avocado, a fresh avocado for lunch, and that was it. That's all I needed for the whole lunch until dinner time. I wasn't doing any snacking. So I'd have my smoothie in the morning, I'd have an avocado for lunch, and then have a salad or some other mix of maybe some cooked food, maybe with some cooked grains with some raw foods at the same time.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure weight loss must accompany that because you aren't eating as much and you're eating raw foods that really are not going to be putting any weight on you.
Well, and yes, and it was so great because that wasn't, I hadn't gone into it with the intention of losing weight, and it was just a byproduct of the whole process. It was like, oh yeah, well, this way I can fit into these pants again. So I felt really good. And one of the things I noticed too is my digestion just was very efficient. And so I do have regular bowel movements, have no problems with diarrhea or
no irritable bowel symptoms. And did you previously?
Not so much. I mean, every once in a while I'd have, after some foods I'd notice I'd get, loose stools or constipated. That was a big thing that was happening before doing the raw food diet. I would get a lot of constipation and feel really bloated and just felt really, really uncomfortable. So then I noticed I don't have that problem anymore. I don't have that issue.
Fantastic. I'm sure people are also going to wonder what you eat in the winter when you really have the desire for something hot.
Yeah, again, being 80% raw, I'm able to bring in some hot foods. Also, if I wanted to, I can also bring in warm foods. So for example, soups that have been warmed and that have not gone above a certain temperature. And that's one of the things with live foods, is that the enzymes are then above about 115 to 118 degrees. The enzymes are killed in the foods. So then the body doesn't get the benefits of the enzymes in the digestive process or the metabolic process either. So with soups, you can warm them on the stove. You can use a thermometer to check that, or if you have a blender that has a high enough speed, you can actually warm it in the blender so you have a nice warm soup.
Could you give me some examples of what you might cook in the blender? Or not really cook, but warm?
Warm. A really quick, easy one is tomato soup. Tomato soup is a great one. It's fresh tomatoes. Organic tomatoes are the best to go. Very flavorful. And you put the tomatoes in. You can add a little bit of, filtered water, depending on, how thick you like your soups. And any spices. I mean, spices are a great, also heating, a warming addition to foods as well. So ginger would be a great one to add to as a warming food, especially in winter. With the tomato soup, you could add all, whatever kinds of flavorings that you like, that your own personal taste.
Excellent. So what are some of the tools that one might need to start eating a raw food diet?
I'd say the major one would be a blender, a really good blender. I actually have a Vitamix, and I love my Vitamix because it can do so much. It warms soups and also makes ice cream, and everything in between. So it's a wonderful tool. Although other blenders, can work as well. So I'd say a blender. A food processor is really nice to have. I have just a teeny little food processor about this big, and it suits my needs for whatever I do. You know, $10, $15 for this little food processor. You can have, you know, the big food processor too. I mean, it doesn't matter. I actually have a dehydrator as well. That's probably, it doesn't have to be necessary. I find that I do a lot of dehydrating, and mine has a temperature control, so I can control it so it doesn't go above 118 degrees when I'm, you know, making kale chips or sweet potato chips. If you choose not to invest in a dehydrator, you can always use the oven at the lowest setting and then keep the door open so that it doesn't get too hot. Because most ovens, especially the older ones, go to like 130 degrees or 150 degrees on warm, something like that. A lot of the newer ovens, I think, have a dehydrator built into them. So there are ways to work around, you know, having to buy a lot of things to eat this particular way.
Do you feel that this is a more expensive way of eating than the standard American diet?
I haven't found it to be so for me. Most of my meals, a lot of my meals consist of using nuts. So whether they're almonds or walnuts or pecans or cashews, those are the major nuts that I use, and then sunflower seeds as well. So for instance, I can make a taco meat that's actually made out of walnuts that I can try to think about, you know, buying a bag of walnuts versus, say, buying ground beef or steak.
Right.
And, you know, the nuts are cheaper and last longer and doesn't go bad as soon as, say, a meat would, for example, especially if you keep them in the refrigerator. So they wouldn't go bad as quickly as, say, in the hot sun, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, I can make a taco meat that has the texture of ground beef, actually, and the flavor. And we can add any kind of flavoring. You know, I use cumin and, you know, a Celtic sea salt and cayenne pepper and kind of, you know, spices in the taco meat. And, you know, I can either make tacos with the shells with romaine hearts, or I can put it in a salad to have a taco salad.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's really wonderful, really wonderful.
And what about time? How much time would that take?
Oh, that takes like 5 minutes.
Really?
5 minutes, yeah. It's just so easy. So I have my little food processor. Take some nuts, put it in there, and then I add, you know, I use a lot of cumin because I like cumin. It's a good
delicious.
One. Yes, it's a good one. And then I use Bragg's amino acids, a wonderful liquid sort of salt substitute. And I'll put a little cayenne pepper in there and then blend it up, and it really does look like
a taco mixture,
yeah, ground beef.
Right?
Yeah, it really does. And that takes, you know, a couple minutes to do that. And then the rest, you know, it's like you put fresh avocado on there, so slicing the avocado, chopping some onions, maybe have a little chopped tomato, a little cilantro, and
sounds
there you have it.
delicious.
You know, whatever you'd put on a taco, that you can make your own fresh salsa. It's very quick and easy as well.
So it's fairly inexpensive. It's not terribly time consuming. You're getting tremendous benefits in terms of energy, clarity. I imagine chronic conditions would probably start to heal with getting more nutrients. Any other aspects to it that you feel would be beneficial?
Well, the mental health aspect is a really good one. You know, being in the mental health field as I am, I've noticed a big difference how the relationship between nutrition and mental health. And one thing that I noticed specifically for myself, and I've noticed with, you know, with my clients as well, is when, like for example, when I'm feeling really healthy in my body, I'm feeling light and clear, I notice a corresponding lightness and clearness in my mental and emotional state. there are times that, say, I had pasta is not good for me, and so when I've had pasta, I think I had some, I don't know, a few months ago, and I really noticed a big difference from when I, so eating pretty well and then having some pasta, and it just felt like this big lump in my stomach, and it felt heavy, and it felt big, and it just felt like it was just sitting there, and I noticed that my mood reflected how I was feeling with that sort of dark and heavy, and I felt depressed. Based on how I was feeling in my body.
How much would you say a person's diet should consist of raw food? Is there any kind of a percentage or rule of thumb?
Well, I'd say any that you can bring into your normal diet now would be beneficial, even if it's like 10%, 5%. Any little bit that you can introduce, I think, is going to have some benefits. Certainly, the more that you introduce into your diet, the more benefit that you will get out of it. So, for the raw foodists who are keen, who are the purists, say, okay, 100% or 90% or above. Most maybe raw foodists agree that about 70% and above, you're getting the most health benefits. But I say that it's like anything that you can introduce to even just start to make that change is going to be beneficial. It's like,
yeah, and as you're making that change, how does the body adjust, and how would you go about introducing the raw food if you're someone that really has not eaten a good deal of raw food?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say listen to your body. That's the biggest key piece of information that I can give. It's like, if you notice you eat a piece of cheese and you feel really lethargic and you just don't feel like you want to move, it's probably a good bet that cheese is not good for you.
Right.
So if you start eating salads and you're finding, I feel more awake, and I feel better if I'm having this salad for lunch versus this big burger. I notice what I feel after I eat and how it impacts me, physically, mentally, emotionally, on all levels. So that's the key thing I'd say, is listen to your body. And
of course, your body's signals are also going to become more fine-tuned as you're eating healthier food. I think when we're eating the processed foods, our taste buds get numb. We really don't taste as well, feel as well. So it's very difficult, I think, to gauge what food is doing what to you.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, because I noticed that when I first started getting rid of especially processed sugars. It's a big one. I didn't eat really a whole lot of sugars to begin with, but I'd have
oh sure,
cookies, whatever. I'd have those things. Some sweets. Yeah. And then when I noticed that I cut out the processed sugars, and there are ways to get sweets on the live raw food diet without compromising one's health. Yeah. Dates are a good example. But noticing that when I cut out the processed sugars, and then when I would try, like a little bite of a cookie or something, I was like, okay, well, let's just see what this tastes like now, see if anything's changed. And it just tasted very synthetic. It just didn't taste good anymore.
Yeah.
Especially after the freshness of the fruits and...
Well, you had mentioned to me earlier, I think, what was it, you called it pecan pie?
Oh, pecan pie.
You've got to tell us about that, because it is fantastic.
Yes, pecan pie, quick, easy. You can have your sweet need met in about 30 seconds. So take a date, a jewel, whatever kind of date, one of the big ones. Take the pit out. And you take a raw pecan, one or two, depending on how crunchy you like it, and then you just put it inside the pecan and eat it. There you go. Quick, easy.
And you don't really want several, do you?
No, I find that one at the very max, two if they're small. I find that all my sweet needs are met with just one. It's like too much. I don't feel like I can have any more. And then I notice that I don't get the spikes from the sugars.
Yeah,
you know, the sugar
because
levels.
you're getting the fiber and you're combining it with the protein.
Right, right. So the sugars, the protein together, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And good, delicious.
Oh, yeah. So what resources would you suggest for someone who wants to start exploring a raw food diet?
Depending on how deeply one wants to get into it. So for example, there's a great book by Gabriel Cousens, and I would put him in the more of the purist realm. So if you really want to go for it and really get into the science behind it, the actual, get into what the benefits are and drill down into what that means on a cellular level. He's the one to check out, and he's got a couple books. One's called Conscious Eating, and he's got another one called Rainbow Green Live Food Cuisine. And a lot of these have recipes in them already. It's wonderful, diverse recipes that some easy to make, some more time consuming to make. So, it runs the whole spectrum, just like with any kind of food. There's those that are easy and those that, take a long time, right? So you can have the whole array there, the whole spectrum. So Gabriel Cousens on one end, and then on the other end is Natalia Rose. Her book is called the Raw Food Detox Diet, I believe. And hers is more geared towards those individuals who are interested in losing weight, actually.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
So for people who are with the standard American diet and wanting to make some changes, she actually has a phase program. It's like, how do you introduce raw live foods into your diet? And you can still go out to eat. You can still have some guilty pleasures. So she incorporates that all in her book. And she also has recipes as well, too.
Oh, terrific. Well, we do need to begin to wrap this up. And I just want to say that this brief discussion just has tantalized me to start really adding more raw food to my diet. I've gone the smoothie route and the salads, but there's so much more that you can do.
Oh, yes.
And I know everything I've tried is delicious. It's fresh tasting. It's really makes you come alive.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Well, and that's one of the things. It's like a lot of these foods are what are called quick exit foods, so it doesn't hang around in the body. And so the nutrients are absorbed, and the rest, the waste, is then just gotten rid of.
Terrific.
Which is really nice, yes. Yeah.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
It's been very informative. If you'd like more information on Dr. Kim, visit www.theshakeupartist.com or by email at theshakeupartist@hotmail.com. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Sheryl Turgeon. See you next time on Living Healthy.